Hello, this is Jerry Morton. Welcome to my Finding My Way podcast. This is podcast number 49, titled Chowing Down. Podcasts 34 through 61 are stories from the year of Army training I experienced. The training started in August 1966 and ended in June 1967. The stories are published in the book Reluctant Lieutenant, From Basic to OCS in the 60s, which was published by Texas A&M University Press as a military history. Chowing Down is an account of Jerry's first meal of eating on the square and other unusual activities during the strange start of OCS in January 1967. It is recommended that you listen to the Army training stories in the order in which the podcast number presents them, so that you can appreciate the full contextual richness of the later stories. "What do you think?" Nate asked as we folded t-shirts and placed them in our respective chest of drawers, the only way they could be placed, the Army way. "It's going to be hectic for a few days. The hell with them if they can't take a joke," I said with a smile. He gave me a big grin. A tall guy in the cubicle behind ours looked over the dividing partition and said, "We'll have fun eating on the square," as he pushed his wire-rimmed glasses back up the bridge of his nose. All three of us rolled our eyes and laughed. "Chow Hall opens in 5 minutes," someone shouted. Collectively, we stopped our various tasks and moved to the stairwell. The bay was strewn with t-shirts, fatigues, footlockers, and 1,000 other items that were in the process of being properly stored but had yet to be placed where they belonged. It was a lot like spring house cleaning. Everything had to be pulled out to get the deep cleaning done. In our case, we were just trying to figure out where to put what, when we still did not know what was what. In short, we are in a state of controlled, hyperactive hysteria. We knew that no matter what we did, it would not be good enough for the morning inspection. It just had to be good enough that your little island did not look worse than the rest. If it did, you would self-select to be the goat. The tax would use you as an example. Everyone else would see why they wanted to do better. No one would want to inflict on themselves what they observed the goats experiencing. Outside, the long line of new candidates snaked into the mess hall. We stood in loose collections of guys talking to each other. We were careful not to seriously disrupt the line's overall quality. This was the last time we would enter the mess hall with such casualness for a long time. Rigid parade rest with no eyeballing would be the only way to stand in line. "I just got out of the Army's language school in Monterey," the wire-rimmed glasses guy told Nate and me. "I'm Scotty," he added, holding out his hand. Shaking it, I asked him what language they had sent him to learn. "North Vietnamese," he said with a sheepish grin. I rolled my eyes. The Army had plans for this guy, and he seemed unaware of it. He was tall, about 6'3", and thin, but lean rather than skinny. His back was slightly hunched. It was as if the only muscles he had bulked up were the upper back muscles. You see that in guys who backpack a lot. I liked him right off. The panicky look in so many of the guys' eyes were not present in his. He was together. As we closed in on the doorway, the talking in line all but ceased. What little there was came across in whispers. The usual muttering of many voices into a blending of continuous sound I had heard in the Army mess hall was missing. All was silent except for muffled shouts of anger and command, followed by the sounds of isolated running feet and repeated number counting. The strain in the voices of the number counters could mean only one thing. Lots of people were dropping and knocking out push-ups. Hell awaited us inside. I stood obediently in line, waiting for my turn to enter. When I reached the door, I could see tactical officers racing up and down the rows of tables looking for victims. "You were eyeballing candidates," screamed the chunky tack. I saw you, you eyeballed that lieutenant when he walked by." He paused for a moment and the candidate mumbled something I could not hear. "Don't try to con me, you scum!" The tack continued. "Drop the fork! Damn it, I didn't say put the fork down. Pick it up. Now drop the damn thing. Drop it, drop it. Don't you know what drop it means? You drop and knock out 50. The guy fell out of his chair into a prone position like frozen wastewater from an overhead jet. "One, sir, two, sir, three, sir," and on, he shouted as he did his push-ups. Another lieutenant was jogging beside a candidate, screaming in his ear that he had better not spill a drop of milk from the 3 glasses of milk on the tray he held over his head as he ran around the tables. Other tacks were engaged in similar, yet equally bizarre acts of harassment. No one needed to tell us to stand at attention and stare straight ahead at nothing as we went through the cafeteria line or marched to one of the many 4-seated tables. Nat, Scotty, and I landed at a table with just one occupant. Without moving his head, he looked up at me and I sat down. I saw the glance with my peripheral vision and smiled slightly. Before my butt hit the chair, a booming voice jarred in my ears. "You eyeballed, you scum! Get out, get out, get out of my dining hall!" A red-faced lieutenant screamed into the guy's ear. He bolted from the chair, and just as quickly as the candidate moved, the lieutenant shouted, "The tray, stupid, the tray, take the tray!" As the wide-eyed candidate turned in mid-stride, the lieutenant swiped the tray and its contents of untouched food onto the floor. "Look at what you did, you stupid thing! Stupidity! Drop, knock out 30!" he demanded. "Not there!" he roared with his face bent into the guy's face as he held himself in the prone push-up position. "Move your face over so it hits the food you want to look at so bad. Get a good look. Get a good look so you won't need to keep looking at it in the future." "Sir, yes, sir," the candidate shouted as he positioned himself and began rhythmically placing his face in the scrambled food beneath him. "One, sir, two, sir," and on it went as the lieutenant shifted his gaze to the 3 of us. We were sitting at attention, staring straight ahead. I had not eyeballed. Basic and AIT had conditioned me to use my peripheral vision by taking things in just before I slept with my eyes open in class. That glassy stare was on me then. "If you men aren't hungry," the lieutenant barked with his face hovering over the center of the table, equally distant from each of the 3 of us, "then get the hell out of here so real soldiers can eat." In a crisp military move, I reached to where my fork should be. It leapt into my hand. I poked at the center of the plate while staring straight ahead into nothingness. Feeling a mass on the fork, I raised it straight up. At mouth level, my arm bent and the fork entered my mouth. There was no telling what I was eating. I didn't care. Calories were all that mattered. The lieutenant twirled and moved toward the table behind him, shouting, "I saw you eyeballing candidate!" We had escaped the first encounter. My peripheral vision told me that Nate and Scotty were pushing food into their mouths as fast as the military process would allow. We were all dropping food back onto our plates, our trays, our laps, and onto the floor. Some food was getting into our mouths. "You get out of here! You've been here too long!" came the abrupt voice hovering over us. "Get out, get out, get out!" The 3 of us Shot straight out of our seats. In a crisp military fashion, we turned and began marching toward the doors. "Run! Get your asses out of my dining hall!" the Tax shouted as we bolted for the exit. Outside, it was peaceful. We looked at each other. I strained, but I was finally able to break wind. The spontaneous laughter was great. In the platoon bay, the ants were at it. Someone had learned where we could take our fatigues to be tailored. Another guy knew the procedure for getting them to the laundry so they could be starched with the heavy creases displayed in the crisp, body-hugging style of the Tax. A couple of the other guys were setting up a stenciling operation so we could all have our names on our t-shirts. I volunteered for the latrine cleaning detail. The skills I had developed had created a degree of pride within me. When the announcement came that we had 15 minutes until lights out, I was glad. Several of the guys intended to sneak around with flashlights, completing little tasks for the morning inspection. I needed the sleep. When the lights went out, I was gone.